Hello and welcome. Today, we're digging into the relationship that basically powers our entire world, the one between the planet's resources and our constant drive for development. It's a connection that has built our cities, fueled our lives, but it's also at a really critical point right now. So let's get into it.
Let's start with a really big question, one that for centuries seemed to have a super obvious answer. Are all the resources around us, the water we drink, the minerals in our phones, the forests we depend on, are they just free gifts from nature, there for the taking? For a long, long time, the answer was a pretty confident yes. This powerful belief that nature's bounty was basically infinite has shaped, well, everything. Our industries, our whole way of life. But as we're now seeing all around us, that core assumption has led to some major planet-sized problems. Yeah, this kind of thinking has had some pretty devastating consequences. Three big ones, really. First, the reckless depletion of vital resources, often just to satisfy the greed of a handful of people. Second, a huge social imbalance where resources and wealth got piled up in the hands of a few, splitting society into the haves and the have-nots. And finally, all of this has fueled the global ecological crises we're all dealing with today, from global warming and ozone depletion to widespread land degradation. So to even begin tackling these problems, we've got to go back to basics and ask a simple question. What actually is a resource? And as it turns out, the answer is a lot more complex than just the stuff we happen to find lying around. You see, for something to be officially considered a resource, it actually has to meet three specific conditions. First, it has to be technologically accessible, meaning we need the right tools and know-how to actually get to it. Second, it's got to be economically feasible, so it has to make financial sense to extract and use it. And finally, it needs to be culturally acceptable. Only when you can check all three of those boxes does a material truly become a resource. This really shows us that resources aren't just found, they're actually developed. And humans, we are right at the very center of this whole process. We use technology to interact with nature, and then we create institutions like governments and markets to speed up development and transform raw materials into things we can actually use. And of course, we can classify resources in a bunch of different ways. The first big split is between natural and human. Then, within the natural resources, there's another key distinction. You've got renewable ones like wind and water, which can replenish themselves. And then you have non-renewable ones like fossil fuels, which are finite. It's a pretty complex web that shows just how diverse our resource base really is. This brings us to a really core idea, and it's captured perfectly in this quote from Mahatma Gandhi. There is enough for everybody's need and not for anybody's greed. It's such a powerful statement. It shifts our focus from just blind exploitation to the urgent need for conservation. So, as these massive problems became impossible to ignore, how did the world respond? Well, a whole new way of thinking started to emerge, sparking a global conversation that would eventually lead to a plan for the planet. And the core concept at the heart of this plan is sustainable development. The idea is simple, but it's also kind of revolutionary. We should develop in a way that meets our current needs without trashing the environment. And, this is the crucial part, without messing things up for future generations to meet their own needs. It's really all about finding a balance. Now, this idea didn't just appear out of nowhere. It was more like a gradual awakening. Way back in 1968, the Club of Rome was one of the first groups to really push for resource conservation in a systematic way. Then, in 1987, the Brundtland Commission report officially introduced the concept of sustainable development to the world. That really built up momentum for a landmark event in 1992. And that event was the first International Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro. This was a massive turning point. For the first time ever, more than 100 heads of state gathered to tackle these urgent global problems. They signed a declaration on climate change and adopted this groundbreaking action plan called Agenda 21. Agenda 21 was incredibly ambitious. Its goals were to achieve global sustainable development, combat environmental damage, fight poverty and disease, all through global cooperation. But one of its most important ideas was that every local government should draw up its own local Agenda 21, bringing this huge global vision right down to the community level. Okay, so let's bring these big global ideas back down to earth. Literally. We're going to look at a case study in resource management that affects every single one of us, the land we live on. Just let this number sink in for a second. 95%. That's the percentage of our most basic needs, food, shelter, clothing that we get directly from the land. It is a finite resource, and it is absolutely vital to our survival.
And of course, land isn't all the same. Using India as an example, you can see a pretty diverse breakdown. About 43% is plain, which is ideal for farming and industry. Mountains make up another 30%, and they ensure the flow of rivers and support tourism. And that last 27% is plateau, which holds rich reserves of minerals and forests. Each type plays a really critical role. But our activities, they've taken a serious toll. The continuous use of land without taking proper care of it has led to widespread degradation. So who are the main culprits? Well, it's things like deforestation, overgrazing, large-scale mining, over-irrigation that makes the soil salty and useless, and just the reckless dumping of industrial waste.
And this isn't just some abstract problem. It's happening right now in specific places. In Indian states like Jharkhand and Odisha, deforestation from mining has caused severe land degradation. In places like Gujarat and Rajasthan, overgrazing is a primary cause. And in the agricultural heartlands of Punjab and Haryana, over-irrigation is the key issue.
But there is hope because we actually have the solutions. The path to conserving our land is pretty clear. It involves things like large-scale tree planting, afforestation, and better grazing management. It means planting shelter belts of trees to stop erosion, stabilizing sand dunes with thorny bushes, controlling mining, and, this one's critical, making sure industrial waste is treated properly before it gets disposed of. These are all solvable problems.
So, what does all this mean for us? From global principles all the way down to local land use, everything points towards a shared path forward, one that the Brundtland Commission so perfectly called our common future.
So here's the key takeaway, the bottom line. Thoughtful, fair resource planning isn't just a nice idea. It is absolutely essential for the survival of all life on our planet. Our future, and the future of every other species, really depends on it. In the end, we have to remember that we've shared this land with generations past, and we have a duty to share it with generations to come. We're all just temporary custodians. So the question this leaves all of us with is, what will our legacy be?